Yesterday marked a pivotal moment for the taxi industry in the Western Cape as the South African National Taxi Council hosted a landmark taxi peace summit. The event, led by Western Cape SANTACO chairperson Mandla Hermanus, brought together a wide range of stakeholders, including taxi leaders, government officials, law enforcement, and representatives from civil society and the private sector. Now, the summit's core focus was to address the root causes of violence, try to foster collaboration, and even try to pave a way for a more safer and perhaps a more professional and more entity as well as an industry for all commuters. Joining us now to discuss the outcomes of the crucial summit and what the next steps are is Western Cape SANTACO chairperson Mandla Hermanus. He joins us on the line. Mr. Hermanus, thank you so much for the time. We've tried to unpack the aim of the peace summit itself. Are these solutions possible at all? Do you see this actually coming to the fore? You speak about turning from a taxi association to a business entity. Can you actually get the buy-in of these taxi owners?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Yes, we believe these things are possible. In the Western Cape, we already started where the provincial body, SANTACO, already has a trading company. And because the Western Cape is divided into 8 regional taxi councils, each of those already has a company, a trading company. Now, the next step is to bring that to the primary associations, where primary associations each have registered companies so that they can trade as companies. And we believe that will go a long way in terms of assisting our operators, because we also have a challenge of operators not being able to meet their monthly installments because the installments are very high. And we believe when they are operating as companies, then they can use their buying power to acquire vehicles under the company names and benefit from lower interest rates, which would reduce the amounts of money that they pay as installments on these vehicles. And the operators are looking forward to that.
But at the same time, registering as a company has many tax implications, and perhaps they don't want to part ways with a lot of their hard-earned money when it comes to that. How do you get around something like that?
Precisely that, because when you trade as a company, then you are subjected to very specific laws, and that fosters accountability in terms of the minibus taxi operators, which will go a long way to addressing some of the root causes of the violence, which is always caused by leaders not being held accountable, misuse of associations' funds, and things like that. And taxi operators, as a rule, they have to be tax compliant in any case for them to be able to acquire operating licenses. So tax compliance is not a challenge, but linked to these companies is a shift towards cashless payment systems. So what that will result in is that we'll be able to understand exactly how much our vehicles are making on a daily basis, because at the moment we rely on the honesty of the drivers who drive these vehicles.
One of the biggest issues has been taxi routes. How do you get around that? Yes, you may have these businesses sort of organized, but the one thing they keep fighting for, the one reason you keep seeing deaths as well, is certainly because of the violence around routes and the traveling that certain taxis can take. How do you get around that as a stark situation?
Yes, so that's why we had government as part of the summit, because there is recognition that some of these things are historical, where you find multiple associations being assigned legal operating licenses for the same route, which always eventually leads to conflict between those associations who are competing on one route because they both have the legal rights to operate on. So the government also has a role to clean up its system to ensure that our operating licenses reflect the actual operations on the ground. And that will go a long way also towards reducing the scourge of violence we have seen over road infiltrations. And also linked to that is a process of vetting of operators and drivers. And also we've pleaded with the associations to bring an end the phenomenon of associations recruiting members continuously whilst our business is shrinking. So now we will ring fence the membership of all associations so that you don't find an association that had 20 members this month, 3 months later it's got 50 members.
Very interesting concept there as well. In terms of timelines, when are you expecting to achieve all of this?
We've given ourselves at least the next 12 months. We will meet again in the next month to actually draft proper timelines, and we must be able to identify which of these things can be easily implemented. So in the next month, we will sit down, go to the drawing board and say we've identified X, Y, and Z as things that can be achieved quickly, and then we will assign timelines to that.
That includes, of course, then the ability to pay not, without cash, for example, the cashless payments, right? Yes,
absolutely. Because we have to, the industry is still stuck in the 80s. I mean, there's your My Cities and the return of rail, which means we want our passengers to be able to use one card to get in whichever mode of transport that they prefer to use. And that is long overdue.
And what about the non-compliant associations then? How do you draw those into line? Because you may come to an agreement of sorts, and then one says, well, actually, now I'm making less money than I did prior to all of these conversations. And they decide that actually they're going to not follow what has been set throughout all of these conversations. How do you plan on drawing them into line? Is that going to mean law enforcement?
Both law enforcement, but most importantly, one of the things that we're able to identify is that where this association starts to deviate from agreements, it's because the agreements were never formalized in the first place. So there were gentlemen's agreements. So when executives change in those associations, new people come with different ideas, and then the whole arrangement collapses. So we're saying where there are agreements between 2 or 3 associations on certain routes, then those agreements must be formalized. And SANTACO and the Department of Transport must be party to those agreements. And then as part of that also, there must be consequences for breaking those agreements. And that those must be legal documents so that people who deviate then can be held accountable.
Yeah. There's a final question to this, and it's around the safety as well of commuters. But you've got other taxis that do operate, right? And those are e-hailing taxis then as well. How does SANTACO then play its role in ensuring that the taxi industry, minibus taxis, are safe, running as this way, running properly as well, but also then not interfering as much with the e-hailing business, which itself is allowed to boom and blossom because it's been allowed into the country?
Yes, at national level, there's e-hailing and meter taxis have been incorporated into the SANTACO structure. We've got representatives from those bodies in our organization. So there's always constant engagement with the e-hailing operators. So we're able to deal with most of the challenges, and we haven't had serious challenges, especially in the Western Cape with e-hailing. I think the main challenge that they have is with general criminality, especially in the townships where there are areas where they fear to operate because they get robbed and attacked and everything.
Very interesting. Mandla Hermanus, thank you so much for the time. 12 months is certainly a very ambitious target, and we'll be keeping track of that then. next year, July, is pretty much where we hopefully will see some progress with regards to all of the elements of this Peace Summit. So just also to let you know that we are running a poll today on the channel then, Mandla, talking about SANTACO's Taxi Peace Summit and whether it will help reduce the violence. We've been asking our audience what their thoughts are. So far, and it's not the close of this poll just yet, but they say that no, it won't necessarily help reduce the violence. 74% of those that have voted so far are saying that it may not necessarily help reduce the violence. So it is going to be incumbent on you to perhaps prove those that are watching and have voted wrong in this case. Thank you so much for the time, though. The Western Cape's SANTACO chairperson, Mandla Hermanus.